What we're calling for is for the Earth Summit, or the Rio Plus 20, to consider substantively what companies should be doing around sustainable development. There's been very little discussion at any of the previous 19 Earth Summits about what companies themselves should be doing. And I find that extraordinarily odd. After all, companies, for the vast majority of the economies around the world, it is companies that deliver our goods and services. Why therefore ignore them when creating conventions, as we've seen on, for example, biodiversity or climate change? Companies are at the very heart of the global economies. So surely there should be something that the UN has to say at Rio around the sustainability of corporates. Now, it is my understanding over the last 19 years that wherever this conversation has come up, it has met a huge front of opposition. And I can understand why that is. Many vested interests believe that this discussion is actually anti-business. We fundamentally disagree with that. This is a pro-business agenda. This is looking at the global sustainable development of the economies for the long term. And those businesses that will suffer in the short term and see their share price perhaps adjusted as a consequence of the intervention that we're working on, the implications of that. It's time that the markets valued corporate sustainability properly in a way that they don't. There is a profound market failure in this area. So the idea, very simply, is that we are proposing that every board of every listed company in the world, and large companies too, be encouraged, if not required, to think about how sustainable development issues will affect the future cash flows of their company. We'd like the board to step back. As a board, they're paid well to look after our interests as investors of your capital. We'd like the board to step back and think about how sustainable development issues are going to affect the cash flows. And we'd like them to publish that thinking. Ideally, we'd like measures of their performance, targets for the future direction of the company, and all the kind of thing that we now are accustomed to getting for some of the best sustainability reports coming out of now, I would argue, hundreds of listed companies. However, there are tens of thousands of listed companies on the stock exchanges around the world. I know for a fact that less than, well, if you look at the Bloomberg data that we use, which is an information tool for fund managers, 23% of the companies that they've analysed, 20,000 companies they've analysed, just 23% published one data point telling us how sustainable their firm is. If Bloomberg, if you look into that data more granular level, Bloomberg has only found 27% of the data that they were looking for in those 23% of the companies. What that means is, in simple terms, more than 90% of the data that Bloomberg has looked at to find is missing. If this was financial reporting, that would be a scandal. There's absolutely no question of that. So what we are proposing is that boards simply be required to think about these issues, to publish their thinking, or to explain why they haven't been able to do that. It's a report or explain proposal. We aren't coming up with hundreds of key performance measures that we want every company in every sector to disclose. We are asking boards to lead the company properly. They are paid well to do that, we'd expect that. So, why do we need Rio? What we need from Rio, we believe, is a convention requiring all the member states to come together and create a level playing field in this area. We've seen some countries like Brazil change their stock market listing rules, and Aviva has done a lot of work on stock market listing rules, and there's a report that I can share later. If any of you want to Google it, it's Real Obstacles, Real Opportunities. Sustainable stock exchanges is the broad approach. So Brazil has embedded it on the listing rules. The UK changed company law back at the end of the run-up to 2000 that came into effect in 2006. We've also seen other attempts at statutory regulation requiring some companies to do reporting. So there's a real mess. If you're a global company, there's a real mess of different requirements at the moment. And there's a vast gap. And that's where we think a convention needs to step in. So we're asking for Rio to come together as countries to agree to create a convention over the next few years on corporate sustainability reporting. That's this little yellow leaflet, the Corporate Sustainability Reporting Coalition. If you represent institutions that are interested in that agenda and want to support it, you'd be standing alongside now 60 other institutions which directly run $2 trillion of assets under management, We also have trade bodies representing over $100 trillion in assets under management. This is an investor-led initiative.